y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do all things creepy, whether that be me telling you guys some stories that are surely going to give you nightmares, or watching some scary paranormal encounters caught on camera. We're talking about scary books, scary movies, folklore. It is a fun time all around, if I do say so myself, and if that sounds cool, I would love to have you here. Now, if you have any stories that you would like for me to read on this series that I do Monday through Friday every single week, please check out the description below to send me in those stories. It'll have the email address and also my other social media links and podcast episode links. But with all that being said, let's get into these stories. Listen, I know a lot of this is going to be extremely unbelievable, but I'm hoping that maybe I can at least come to you. Okay, let's start with something that I only found out around the age of 16. I've always been protected by a deity-like entity tied to the moon. At 16, I found out her name was Luna, and she was also heavily associated with wolves. At 14, I discovered that I could astral project and see things from the alternate reality that I often visited. Entities that, and I know how that sounds, came from anime, TV shows, movies, and books, basically media. These beings acted exactly like they would in the show. I could converse with them on this plane and the other. I'm telling you this to say that I've always been a bit sensitive to the other side of reality and to give context to how open I was to things. Experience number 1, evil forests. I remember people talking about that on TikTok a few years back. Was it called shifting? Is that what you're talking about? Now to the real meat of one of the most prominent stories that spanned most of my life. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Michigan in East Tawas, a town so small that no one has really heard of it. Our house was in the middle of a retired cow field, creek in the back, neighbor to the right, and a man-made forest to the left. I refer to this forest as the evil forest, even from a young age. This forest gave off a foul vibe, even during the day. Like everything in me would tell me not to go in, and I went anyways. It was always dead silent in there. No bugs, no animals or birds, sometimes not even wind. I had some weird-ass experiences in there. I once saw something that looked like a kite from the movie Critters, like the rolled up ball form they use for traveling, just a black ball of fuzz rolling away from me out of the corner of my eye. I also found only deer bones in there, mostly skull, one time a piece of spine and a shoulder blade. Weirdest thing was, these bones were never there when I went back to spot on another day. Being curious and very morbid, I did a dumb thing and picked up the bones to fiddle with them before putting them back. I only now know that that was a terrible idea. You know what, I can't even say anything because I have been known to collect a bone, and it's not good. The forest probably doesn't like it, but I get it. It's like the little collector crow mentality. I get you. I'm the same way. One time while in there, I found another skull and was examining it. While doing so, I heard a low growl right behind me. Now, I was never told any rules, obviously, yet something instinctively told me not to run, to just walk out casually, but a bit faster than normal. At night, the forest was so much worse. If I was ever outside at night, which often I wasn't, I stayed very far away from that forest. Until one night, my dog Lady, who didn't normally go into the forest when I let her off her tie, goes bolting in, barking wildly. I, of course, do not really want to leave her in there, but she isn't coming back when I call her. So I walk up to the forest, and I'm already not wanting to go be anywhere near it, but also have a bad feeling that Lady will pass if I don't go get her. I step 1 foot past the barrier. Instant, horrendous gut feeling, everything in me screaming that if I go further, I won't make it out. As horrible as it is, I said, screw the dog, and went back inside. Thankfully, she came back in soon after and was fine. I honestly think there was something bad in there, a windy boy or a skinny boy, but something bad. I'm convinced the only reason that I never got nabbed was because of the innate protection I had from Luna, because I went in there way more often than I should have. You're probably right. I'm sure there was some protection on you, and sounds like that kind of went to your dog as well, that protection did, because unless it was just running from the dog, which maybe. Experience 2, possible werewolf spotted twice. Alright, now again, I know this will probably trigger some bullshit senses, but bear with me. Our house is set up very weird. Before my youngest brother was born, I had one of the bedrooms at the front of the house, the room my middle brother would eventually get. While I was still in that room, I had a pretty disconcerting experience. I had a hard time sleeping at night because of course, so I was up reading. There was a thunderstorm and I could see lightning through the window right across from my bed. In a flash, I saw something. It was as tall as a full-grown man and broad. I could see 2 tall pointed ears like wolf's ears and the silhouette of fur all over him. Then it went dark and I was frozen, legit freaked out. Though I didn't call for my parents because Mom wouldn't believe me and Dad Dad was best left undisturbed. So I waited until the next lightning flash to see if it was still there, and it was gone, thankfully, but that didn't help me feel much better. The second time, my youngest brother had been born, and an additional was added to the back of the house that had a second living room and my room. I was pretty isolated from the family in that wing. In this room, my bed was against the wall opposite to the door. Between the door and my bed was a window. It was almost the exact same as the first time. I was unable to sleep and was reading. My dog was lying next to me asleep, and suddenly her head jolts up and she's snarling at my window. Not knowing the rules, I look up at the window and see it again. I blink and it's gone, but that didn't help me sleep, needless to say. Okay, let's talk about that. So, that could have still been the thing in the woods. They can look like whatever they want to, and it could have just been standing out there. Who knows, though? Experience 3. Shadow people. This more happens to my middle brother for a while. Let me explain. Out of nowhere, middle brother starts sleepwalking. Bad, to the point that it's dangerous. At this time, he's seeing a shadow person at the end of the hall that leads to the garage door. Soon after, he starts talking about it, only start having nightmares about the same shadow person. Only he charges me every time. Thankfully, he stops sleepwalking and is seeing the shadow man at the same time soon after, making it stop for me as well. It's weird that you were both experiencing that, but I don't know, sleepwalking is such a creepy thing because I think whenever we sleep, we can visit places that aren't here, if you're catching my drift. So sleepwalking, it just seems even more like personal and like makes you even more open and susceptible, and I don't like it. Sleepwalking creeps me out. Experience number 4, stupidity with Ouija boards. These 2 instances are why I'm convinced that I have legit protection from the deity that I know is Luna. I was a dumb kid and very badly wanted to experience the paranormal. So when my birthday came up, I think I was 15 or 14, I asked my friends if they wanted to do the Ouija board. For this party, we'd been set up in my parents' camper, so we were alone. One of my friends, who was always much more spiritual, utterly refused and told us to do it in a different room of the camper than her. Now, we made several disastrous mistakes. We tried to talk to my dead cat. I know that's bad. We didn't have any protection because we thought it was just a toy. We never said goodbye. The second incident, I decided to do it by myself in my closet. Thankfully, I didn't get anything, but I also didn't say goodbye then either. I've literally been putting myself up on the silver platter while already sensitive, and I'm so grateful to Luna for putting up with me. Now I can describe Luna. I'm not very aware of the moon deities. I only know what she communicated to me. She's glowing white. Her skin, her hair, her gown she wears. Her eyes are a striking unnatural blue. She feels like a mother to me, and she's told me that I am considered one of her many children. She's stronger during full moons and disappears during new moons. She's communicated her symbol to me, and I'll use a finger to trace it over doors or places I move for protection. The symbol I associate with her in my mind's eye is a waxing crescent moon with an upside-down cross held between the 2 points. I'm unsure if she is a deity that exists in our reality, or if she is exclusive to the alternate reality I visit in my sleep. I do hope you found my stories interesting, at least. So, her symbol. It sounds a little bit like Lilith's. So Lilith has 2 symbols. This is one. She has another one. It's like a crescent moon. So here's the moon, and then like right here on the bottom, it goes down into an upside down cross. It sounds very similar. And she is also, at least I associate her with the moon. She's associated though with new moons, not full moons. She doesn't really give off the glowy vibe, so I don't think that's her, but the symbol's really close. I don't know of any deity like that, but maybe someone will. Alright, next story. I have one full story and a couple of incidents to tell you about. I've been binging your follower stories for over a week and just having the playlist up while I do my thing. When I was 13 or 14, we lived in a really rough fixer-upper. Like, I fell through the floor rough, though that has nothing to do with ghosts. It was 2010. I remember this because of a correlation to the address, and we had gotten a house phone. One of those oh-so-fancy wireless ones that light up and stand in a cradle at the base that also charges them. We were setting up the voicemail message with me in the living room to make sure the message worked and all. For a little context, the house was a kind of long box, with the living room at the front, dining room in the middle, the kitchen at the back, and the bedrooms along the side. So I was in the living room, in an oppressive shade of red, not really relevant, but I just want you to picture a young, easily scared teenager alone in a silent living room, waiting for the phone to ring. And my mom and older brother were in the kitchen. The phone rang, went to voicemail recording of "You've reached, can't come to the phone," etc. went off. And then after the beep, my mom, on her fancy new cell phone with the slide up, said, "Okay," after which I heard another male voice say, "Help me." Thinking it's my brother trying to scare me because I was super into ghost hunters at the time, I went into the kitchen, Very funny, I said, and he laughed until I told him what I actually heard. See, Cameron had tried to mess with me, but by doing a Tarzan yell, not a choked whisper like the message was. We all went to the living room to listen back to the message, and here's what we heard in order. The voice message. Mom. Okay. Click of hanging up. Strangled voice. Help me. Backstory on the house. Before we moved in, some guy broke in. Wouldn't have been hard, there were holes everywhere, and took his own life. We believe that's who we heard on the machine. That's my one definite ghost experience, but I do have a couple of incidents to tell you about too. The first one was in the house we moved into after moving out of that house from the story. I was asleep and got woken up by a huge bang on the wall. Nothing happened after that, it was just really weird. Next, the property we live on now. It's the first place we've owned and not rented. It's mostly rock and hills, and we're down in one of the lowest parts of it. The downside of this is flooding. The upside is most of the wind and tornadoes pass over us. One time, quite literally, we live in Oklahoma. The first incident is actually my mom's experience. We'd recently lost one of the best dogs we'd ever had, Mocha. She was technically my sister's dog, but we all loved her to bits. She loved everyone, never met a stranger, except one, and she's unfortunately still our neighbor. Her favorite toy was empty plastic bottles. One night, not long after we lost her, my mom was sitting in the living room and heard what sound she used to make when playing the plastic bottles. Playful growls, little yips, and the plastic being crinkled and thrown around. Looking back, I think it was Mocha's way of letting us know she was okay. Another incident, my own, that I'm still not sure of if it was a ghost or a human, is that one night I was laying in bed next to a sliding glass window. I heard footsteps take off running just on the other side of the glass. The dogs didn't react, which is what makes me think it might have been paranormal. Lastly, and most recent, I was on my bed in the same RV but on the opposite side of the bedroom in the back. I look outside and see the shadowy silhouette of a man in a hooded sweatshirt walking by the barn behind a tree. This one I'm quite sure was paranormal because, again, the dogs didn't react, including one who was quite terrified of strangers and men in particular. It was solid enough to make me unsure, but our dogs bark if a neighbor sneezes, so I'm going to go with paranormal. So that's it. I haven't really experienced much of what I can for sure say is paranormal, though I did used to think I could hear my name being called in the silence of another old house we used to live in, but I think that's not that unusual. I've also had a dream that I was talking to an unknown relative along with my sister, who's closest in age to me, just walking and talking in this weird reddish-orange landscape, but it was vague enough that I don't think it was necessarily anything weird, just thought I'd mention it. Much love to you. Okay, those all sound paranormal though. Even your voice being called, that sounds paranormal to me. All right, next story. I don't know how to start this, but when I was little, my mom and stepdad and stepbrother lived in an old farmhouse that had plenty of land. The house had 3 stories to it, and my stepbrother's room was at the front of the house upstairs. He had a giant window that showed the 2 nice barns we had, but there was also a creepy barn that you could hear creaking when the wind was blowing. My room was in the back that had a window and showed cornfields for miles. Indiana for you. Anyways, my stepbrother wasn't there all the time, so I would sneak into his room on the weekends and play his Xbox. He had a creepy closet, so I always kept a light on and the door closed. We had an outside cat that somehow always knew I was in his room because she would jump at the window and paw to come in. I would let her in, and one night I was playing video games and I heard her pawing. I went to the window to let her in, and by the creepy old barn there was a figure. It wasn't quite a person, nor an animal, but it just stood there staring at me. I tried not to acknowledge it, but by the time I'd let my cat in the window, my brother's closet door started to open. My cat started to puff and hiss and growl. Mind you, she had never done that. She's as sweet as pie. When I looked at the door, there was nothing, but when I looked out the window again, the figure was gone. Then the light bulb blew. That was the last time I ever set foot in that room again. I started letting the cat in the back door and never saw that figure again. Ew! Don't like that. Alright, next story. I have multiple stories from my dad's house that aren't necessarily scary, but we can't really explain how these happened. I'll start off by saying that the house is on about 40 acres and is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods and cornfields. The house was built in 1870s, and he's owned this house since the early 90s. He's always said weird stuff happens, but will never share his stories. Last summer in June, my older sister and me decided to stay over one night. My dad works night shifts down in Cincinnati, so we were going to be home alone for a while. Later that night, we decided to watch some movies. We both love scary movies, so we decided on Signs. Oof. As we were watching it, everything was normal. Then after it was done, she got up to take the movie out. It wouldn't let her. It just kept jumping back to the part where they were in front of the cornfield. It kept replaying and replaying. After a few more tries to get it out, she unplugged the TV. As she unplugged the TV, the movie disc came out and flew across the room onto the couch. When we plugged the TV back in, it kept saying disc loading and wouldn't let us do anything. Not the scariest thing, but still super odd. Next, when we were younger, my older sister, one of my brothers, and I were sitting down playing Uno. As we were sitting down in the living room playing, the bathroom door in the hallway creaked open. My older sister got up to go check to see what was going on and to close the door all the way. As she was walking there, a Pringle came flying out of the bathroom and suddenly the bathroom light came on. We were convinced our sister was trying to scare us or something, but to this day she swears up and down that she didn't do that. Also to mention that we never had food like that growing up in the house, so we had zero idea on where it came from. Finally, at the back end of the house, there is this basement. One of those basements that opens up from the outside with the two big doors. Multiple times that I know of, those doors would randomly open and close by themselves. Well, one day, me and my sister were out back with her dog, and we heard a loud screeching. Her dog started growling and looking around. We were wondering what was going on. As we were tying up the dog to go back in, the basement door very loudly opens, and the screeching stops as soon as the doors were open. I'm not really sure if this is enough to share or put in a video, but I thought I'd try anyways. That is enough. Oh my god. Those basements freak me out. I think like the cellar-esque basements don't like. I feel trapped. I'm like disconnected. I don't like that. But anyways, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.